Good evening, everybody. I'm, I hope everybody is staying cool today on this hot day. And I want to welcome everybody to our Hacienda La Puente Unified School District Vaccine Parent Presentation Information Night. So I want to start off by saying I'd like to thank all of you who are here today with us, our parents, our community members, and even our students who may be tuned in because you have questions about COVID-19 vaccines. So this evening, it is with great honor that I share with you. We have our educational partners that we have in the community, an organization that's close and nearby to us, Kaiser Permanente Baldwin Park Medical Center is here with us this evening to talk to us about vaccines. And before I introduce our guests who will be speaking to us this evening, I'd like to share that we are actually having some vaccine clinics that we are sponsoring in our school districts. So the next one that's coming up is on July 22nd and 23rd at the La Puente High School gym, and that's in partnership with Walgreens. So we hope if you are still unvaccinated and you are considering it, you can stop by, and there is a way to register. So please check our social media pages for instructions on how to do that. So let us begin. I'd like to introduce to you all Monty Brandman, who is a registered nurse with 26 years of hospital and ambulatory experience. She earned her master's degree in healthcare education and is nurse executive board certified and a public health nurse. She currently serves as a chief nurse officer, assistant medical group administrator, and COVID-19 vaccination administrative lead at the Kaiser Permanente Baldwin Park Medical Center. She enjoys community service, mentoring, and education. Monty is currently working on her PhD in nursing to help educate the next generation of nursing and healthcare professionals. So welcome this evening, Ms. Montiel Brandman.
Thank you. Thank you so kindly. It is an absolute privilege to be here and to speak with you regarding something that is very near and dear to my heart. And that is, of course, COVID-19 and the vaccinations. And so we're just going to have a very casual conversation. I am in no way here to convince anyone of anything. I am here to share information. And then with that information, you can make choices for you and for your family. So I am honored to be here. Thank you. So if we have the slide deck, if we're ready to move forward, let's just jump right in. So we are going to be discussing COVID-19 vaccinations, and I'm going to go over a little bit of history about COVID-19 and help share a little bit about the disease and what we can do to try to protect ourselves. I have Dr. Margaret Curry's name listed here. She is my partner, physician partner. She is with our pediatric department. She could not be here tonight, but I am here in her stead, and I am happy to be here to share some information with you about the vaccination process. So thank you so much again for the privilege, and we'll jump right in and start learning about COVID-19 and vaccinations. Next slide, please. So I'm going to share some images, and this will hopefully help you understand the process and what happens to our bodies when COVID-19 exposure occurs. So don't worry so much about the slides and don't get too concerned or worried. We're going to really break this down very simply for you. What you see on the far left is that infamous picture that you see on television of what a COVID-19 cell looks like. It's what we call SARS-CoV-2. I won't get technical, but you just need to know that is what the virus looks like on the left, the purple image. And then on the right, that's us. That's what our cell looks like. And those two cells want to communicate. And how they communicate, you'll see, is through that spiky protein. That's going to be very important for you to remember because we're going to talk about what the vaccine does and how it protects you. Next slide, please. So with the same image, you'll see that there needs to be some kind of communication between the virus and your cell. Those two cells, again, want to get together. So you'll see in this image here just that, the COVID-19 cell having a communication, if you will, with your own cell. This is the beginning of what COVID-19 infection looks like. Next slide. So what we are attempting to do with the vaccine is block that communication process. It's that simple. How do we block those two cells from having this party that we don't like at all? So what we're going to be doing is talking about how the antibodies that we receive as a product, if you will, of the vaccine, how that helps to block that communication process. Next slide, please. So before we get too detailed in that, I'm going to share a little bit about phases of clinical trials. You've heard that perhaps before. That's important to know, but not a need to be afraid of. When we hear clinical trials, no need to be afraid, because we have a process that we follow and we do not deviate from that process in science. So phase 1 of this clinical trial, you'll see here on the slide, has a very few number of people that are involved. We're way past this at this point, but that was the very beginning. Very small number of people involved in the trial. And you'll see the number here, 20 to 100 healthy volunteers. And you'll see below where it says, what we're really focusing on is, number 1, is this vaccine safe? 2, are there any serious side effects from getting the vaccine? 3, how does this vaccine dose really relate to any side effects? So we want to know how much to give and what happens when we give you that dose. And is the vaccine causing an actual immune response? Is it going to block that communication, right? That's the key. So before I go on to the next slides, I want to share with you a little story about mice and COVID-19 and why a lot of us are protected and safe today. Thank you, mice. So in science, we do a lot of work with mice. And in this particular case, in COVID-19 and SARS-CoV-2, which is the name of the virus, we did a lot of work with mice. We, meaning science, did work. So you see here 20 to 100 healthy volunteers. Well, that's talking about humans, but the same thing was done basically with mice before it got to us. So let me tell you about what happened with these mice. So I'm going to give you an image to help you understand the process. So let's say we take 100 healthy mice that we know have been bred to do this work. We know that they haven't been exposed to anything. They're clean, they're healthy, they don't have COVID. We gave them one vaccination. And then what do? We take these healthy mice with that one vaccine. We introduce these mice along with a bunch of other mice that we know have COVID-19. So we have healthy mice vaccinated, unhealthy mice that have COVID-19. And guess what mice do? They mingle, just like humans. When they mingled, we were able to then separate out the mice, because of course, this is science. We can tag mice. We know who our study mice are and who our sick ones are. So we pull the mice out, and guess what we saw when we pulled out those 100 mice? We saw that about 40 to 50% of those mice did not contract COVID-19. Wow, that's great. That sounds like a flu vaccine. In fact, our flu vaccine isn't even that great. But they said, okay, well, let's continue to research this a little bit further. So imagine taking 100 healthy mice, you give them 2 vaccines. We take those healthy mice with those 2 vaccines, and guess what we do? We intermingle them with the COVID-19 mice that we know have COVID-19. We separate these mice back out again, and guess what we find? 94, 96% of these mice did not catch COVID-19, did not get sick. That's very important to remember and very important to know, because that sparked the work that needed to be done with humans and with people. And guess what happened when they did the same thing with people? Same thing. They put healthy humans, these volunteers that we're talking about, that we knew did not have COVID-19. We put them around people that had COVID-19 after they had gotten one vaccine. 40% of them, 40 to 50%, did not catch COVID-19. Guess what that sounds like? The same story with the mice. We take a group of individuals, give them 2 vaccines, put them again with people that we know have COVID, check them, 94 to 96% of them, no COVID-19, not sick. What they saw very quickly was that this vaccine was going to be our saving grace, so to speak. And they very quickly went into replication. We're going to talk about that, and I'm going to move through these slides, but I wanted you to really understand the science and why we knew that this vaccine was going to be the answer, or one of the answers. So phase 2, again, several hundreds of people are volunteering. This is not us. We are not these volunteers. These volunteers have long been vaccinated, and they've helped the rest of us be safe. They're wanting to know, what are the most common short-term side effects? We want to know, if we give this vaccine, what's going to happen to you in the short term. What is your body's immune response? Because that's what's important. We need to make sure that our immune system is going to kick in and protect us. Are there signs that the vaccine actually protects us? That's what we need to know. When it goes to phase 3, now there's a lot more volunteers. Now we have 1,000+ volunteers. And what are we looking at? How do disease rates compare between people who get the vaccine and people who don't? Who's protected? Who's not protected? How well can the vaccine protect people from the disease? And then we go to our last phase, which is phase 4, vaccine approval. Now, this is important to remember because you hear emergency use authorization. You hear that on the news and on television. Emergency use authorization did not mean and does not mean that it's not a safe or good vaccine or that it's different. It just means that because we were in and are in a pandemic, we need to get the resolution vaccine out to you sooner than later. The science didn't change. No corners were cut. So the FDA needs to approve and make sure that this vaccine is safe, that it's effective, and that the benefits outweigh the risks. Is it more beneficial for you to be vaccinated, or is there more risk? Researchers, of course, are continuing to collect data, and that's why it's important for us to continue to get vaccinated, because we know that the vaccine is safe. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but what I want you to understand, and I spoke to this already, we did not take any shortcuts. During normal times, and some people thought that the vaccine process was rushed, but it was not. So here's what happened. With the traditional process, the vaccine takes many, many years to develop. There's this preclinical development, there's this clinical development, and we just talked about the phases. And then there's a license to produce the vaccine, and then there's a large scale production of the vaccine. So in a pandemic, which of course we're dealing with, right? We need things to move a little bit more quickly. We don't cut corners. We just need the process to speed up. So that's what we did. The process had to speed up. So we had the clinical development, which is phases 1, 2, and 3, that led to the license being issued so the vaccine could be given to you and to me. And the large scale production of this vaccine happened at the same time. Now, let me tell you why that had to happen. Remember the story of the mice. As soon as they issued the vaccines to the mice and they saw this vaccine is protecting the mice, they issued it to us and they saw that it was protecting us also. They immediately went into production. because they saw that they had the answer. And thank goodness they did that, because that's why we have vaccine today. That's why we're protected today. Next slide, please. So let's talk about how the vaccine actually works. That's what you want to know. What does this thing do to me when it gets inside of me? How does it protect me? So you've heard about an mRNA vaccine, perhaps. And what the mRNA vaccine does is, and you'll see these images here, the mRNA vaccine gives your immune system instructions. This is what the vaccine does. The vaccine is giving your cell an instruction, not the live virus. You are not getting a dead virus, a COVID-19 virus, like you do with some other vaccines where we actually give you the dead virus so that it elicits a response of your immune system. That's not what happens. It is not the actual COVID-19 dead virus itself. What we're doing is giving your body instructions how to recognize COVID-19 and how to fight it. So let's go to the first image that you see below there. You see the little spiky protein. mRNA vaccine gives the instruction to the cell in your muscle, and it's that spiky protein piece. So you see the little image there with the spiky protein. All they did is they said, hey, let's take that little piece so we can teach our bodies how to recognize the virus. Remember, the spiky protein and that cell, they want to communicate and connect. So what we did is, or what they did is that how to recognize that part of the spiky protein was placed into the vaccine. It then gets injected into your arm, the muscle of your arm. The muscle then receives this information and says, okay, I just was given instructions to make spiky proteins. I want you to follow me here. Your body was told, make spiky proteins. The muscle cell in the arm starts doing it. It got instructions and it just followed out what it was supposed to do. Now, your immune system is traveling around in your bloodstream and it says, hey, we're not supposed to be making spiky proteins. And what your immune system then says is, we've got to stop this process and we've got to recognize how to fight these spiky proteins. So after, again, spiky protein, the how to make it is what gets injected into the arm. Your muscle cell starts making spiky protein. Your immune system says, hold on, that's not what we're supposed to do. Let's learn how to fight this. Your immune system then kicks in, and something that we call T cells says, hey, which is antibodies. We need to know how to recognize this spiky protein. This is really critical for you to understand. This is all your immune system is saying. We need to recognize that spike. This process teaches your body how to recognize the virus, because remember, the COVID-19 virus has that spiky protein on the outside. So now that your immune system knows how to recognize it and fight it, it's ready. In the event you come across a COVID-19 virus or a person who's already infected with COVID-19. That's really important to really understand. You're in no way, shape, or form are you getting or is your immune system or DNA changing. We're just teaching your body how to recognize it. Next slide, please. Okay, so now that our bodies, understand how to recognize this wonderful little spike protein that really wants to make us sick, here's how we go about doing that. And we know that there are different vaccines that are available. So you've heard about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and we have the number here of the study participants that were originally involved. And it has an 85% overall vaccine effectiveness rate. That means when we talk about those mice again, that had the mice been given Johnson & Johnson, 85% of them that got the one vaccine that hung out with all the other COVID-19 mice, we checked them, 85% of them good. They did not catch it. So that's why with Johnson & Johnson, you'll see that it's 85%. It is for 18 years and older. So we do not offer Johnson & Johnson to children. That is not happening at this time. So let's move on to the next offering, and that is Pfizer. Pfizer is an mRNA vaccine. You'll see the study participant numbers listed there. 95% overall vaccine effectiveness rate. What that means is 95%, you have a 95% chance, like the mice, of getting around COVID-19 and not getting sick, or at least not sick enough, like you've heard about people on the news and in the hospitals. Now, this vaccine is available for 12 years old and older, 12 plus. That is important to know for those of you that are parents that are looking to get your children vaccinated or considering vaccination for your children that are 12 years and older. Pfizer is the vaccine. Let's move on to Moderna. Moderna is also an mRNA vaccine, like I just described, 94%. Now, these numbers may slightly start to change as more people are getting vaccinated, but the numbers are remaining high. So it's very important to consider protecting yourselves and your families. 94.1% effective rate, and it is for 18 years and above. So this is for adults. So keep in mind, Johnson & Johnson, one vaccine for adults. Moderna, two vaccines for adults. Pfizer, fair game, 12 plus. Just also want to make sure I call out, there are other vaccines that are coming out. They're very close to being released. There's the Novavax. That vaccine is showing a lot of promise. That will come out soon, so you'll hear more about that. Oxford and AstraZeneca's vaccine is also soon to be released, so you'll start to hear more about different options for vaccines. Next slide, please. So you hear all this talk about vaccines. I'm worried, I'm concerned, what do I do? What's going to happen to me? Let's talk about typical side effects if you haven't heard this already. Most common side effects are fever, fatigue, muscle aches, and soreness at the injection site. Very, very normal responses, and in almost all cases resolves very quickly, like 24 hours, 48 hours quickly. Myself, I volunteered to share my arm with the first vaccine, a little bit sore. In the middle of the night, I felt a little bit sore, but I did, fairly well. I know of people that did have a slight fever, felt a little achy, lasted a day, and they were fine. Next slide. So let's talk about what happens if you're getting vaccinated. And since we're talking about this being a studies and we're trialing things, who's keeping track of what's going on with this vaccine? So the CDC has offered us a program called Be Safe, and this is what's used for your vaccination process. All you really need to understand and remember about Be Safe is it is the application that the CDC is using to stay in communication with you regarding your vaccination process, what your symptoms are, how you're feeling. Have you been in contact with anyone who's had COVID-19? Have you yourself tested positive for COVID-19? They'll ask you different questions. It's very quick, it's very simple, and it really helps ensure that we have the information that we need to keep tracking the virus, to keep tracking the vaccine. Let's go to Be Safe will remind you if you've had one vaccine, it will remind you when it's time to have that second one. But in most cases, if you're going to get your first vaccine, it will certainly tell you. They'll usually make your appointment for your second vaccine, so you shouldn't have to worry about that. And if you do choose to go with Johnson & Johnson, that's the only one vaccine that you'd have to worry about. Okay, so next slide. So, can a COVID-19 vaccine make me sick with COVID-19? Remember, we didn't give you COVID-19. We gave you the little bitty spiky protein information and told your body how to make it. And remember, the only point of doing that was so that your immune system could recognize that spiky protein in the event you get exposed to it. So that way we could block that communication and the start of that infection. So no, mRNA vaccines do not contain live virus, so you don't have to worry about the vaccine giving you COVID-19. Your body's going to react perhaps to the vaccine, but I tell people, don't panic about that. If you wake up with a little bit of a sore arm, or maybe you have a slight fever, what it tells you is you got that vaccine right in that muscle where we want it. So we don't want people to panic about that or be concerned about that. And keep in mind that after you're vaccinated, it takes a few weeks for your body to build up that immune system, that immunity that I was talking about with wanting to block that communication. So if you're planning vacations, parties, trips, places you want to go, and you're considering getting vaccinated, keep in mind that you get one vaccine, it doesn't mean that your immune system has gone to work immediately. It takes about a few weeks, and some people maybe a few weeks for your body to protect you from that vaccination. Okay, so next slide, please. After getting the COVID-19 vaccine, will I test positive for COVID-19? Nope, not because of the vaccine. So if someone tells you they got vaccinated with COVID-19, the COVID-19 vaccine, and then, a couple of weeks later, they ended up having COVID, it was because they were already exposed to it. So keep in mind that when you're exposed to COVID-19, you may not find out, your body may not show symptoms or signs of it for a couple of weeks. So keep that in mind, and just know that the vaccine will not cause you to test positive for COVID-19. If your body develops an immune response, the goal of the vaccination, there is a possibility that you could test positive for some of the antibodies. So there are tests that we can do that tell us if you developed antibodies. That is not a bad thing. We want to know that the vaccine is working and you develop antibodies. Antibody tests indicate that you had a previous infection, but in some cases, it could mean that in this case, that your immune system is able to recognize that spiky protein. Next slide, please. If I have already had COVID-19 and recovered, do I even need to get vaccinated? So yes, we are still encouraging people to be vaccinated because we don't really know what your immune system has done in response to your infection. There are some conversations that are starting to come out, whether or not they're trying to determine if people don't need to be vaccinated after an infection, but I'm telling you now, that has not been determined. So if you know of someone or you yourself have been positive for COVID-19 and you're thinking about getting vaccinated, we are still strongly encouraging you to get vaccinated. We don't know how long that immunity is going to last. And so it is important to protect yourself with the vaccine. Next slide, please. Will a COVID-19 vaccination protect me from getting sick with COVID-19? Yes, that is the whole point of it. Remember, those cells want to communicate. And what we need to do is to stop that communication. And we do that by giving you the vaccine and making sure that your body understands how to recognize that spiky protein that wants to have that communication with your cell and start an infection. So being protected from getting sick is important, of course, as we know. We've seen the severe illnesses. We've heard of the devastation. And I personally have lived through that here at the hospital. And we really want to make sure that you're protected. Next slide, please. Will a COVID-19 vaccine alter my DNA? No, we're not going to turn you into a COVID-19 cell. That's not what we're going to do. That mRNA virus, nope, not going to happen. We promise you will not alter and change or morph into anything or anyone else. It's only going to teach your body how to recognize that spiky protein. What's also important to know is that in your own body, your DNA, there's no mixing, and you don't have to worry about your DNA and something from this virus, like I said, creating some other person or something different. Not how it works. Remember, the information goes into your arm. Your muscle cell just got instructions on how to make what that spiky protein looks like. Your immune system says, you don't make that. We need to learn how to fight that, and learns how to block that whole response. And those T lymphocytes, or your immune system, says, I know how to recognize this. Come on, COVID, if you come, I'm ready for you. I know how to fight you. Next slide, please. Is it safe for me to get a COVID-19 vaccine if I would like to have a baby one day? And all of the literature is saying absolutely yes. People who want to get pregnant in the future may receive COVID-19 vaccine. In fact, we have many of our own employees and physicians that are pregnant that have been vaccinated successfully. So based on our current knowledge, which is what we can share with you, is that yes, you are absolutely fine to be vaccinated. And what we're finding, and we've vaccinated many of our pregnant patients because they are learning that babies are now being protected, unborn babies, while you're being vaccinated, mom. So that is very important to know. Next slide, please. I received the vaccine, therefore I don't have to wear my mask or socially distant. Okay, so today is a special day. Yesterday being the 15th, we know that things have changed, and we know that people are now able to unveil and we're able to see faces again. Here's what I kind of caution people to remember, especially if you are not vaccinated. Because you've been allowed to take your mask off does not mean that you don't have to wear it if you want to. You can certainly still wear your mask. Here at the hospital and in certain environments, we are still masking. We are still making sure that we protect ourselves as well as protecting you. So yes, you should still be wearing your mask if you feel comfortable wearing it. And in certain environments, you may still have to wear a mask. But keep in mind, good hand hygiene is very important. We've all learned and heard that by now. Keep washing your hands. Wear your mask in places, even if that's not required, if you feel comfortable. And like I said, if you have not been vaccinated, I strongly encourage you, please consider protecting yourself and consider vaccinating, not just for you, but for your family members and loved ones that you're around, and for the general public. And keep distance from people if you don't need to. Keep in mind, this is the honor system now that these masks are off, and we don't know who's been vaccinated, and we don't know who's protected. And what you don't want to do if you're not vaccinated is still come into close proximity with people who may be carrying the virus, because COVID-19 is not over. I assure you, we still have people hospitalized with this disease, and we are still helping them fight. Okay, be careful out there. Next slide, please. Additional benefits of getting the COVID-19 vaccine: helps protect other people. We just talked about that. Vaccination is a safer way for your body to learn how to fight the virus than getting the virus itself. Vaccinations will create this antibody response without you having to be sick. The vaccine is safe. Combination of getting vaccination and following the CDC recommendations, such as washing your hands, wearing masks when appropriate, will absolutely help us get to the bottom of this pandemic. Next slide, please. So it is easy to get vaccinated now. It's not like the beginning of this pandemic, and it's not like the beginning of this year when everyone was fighting to get in line to be vaccinated. There are many opportunities for you to be protected, for your loved ones, for your children to be protected. Vaccinations are in high demand, but we have plenty of vaccinations for you. So if you are thinking about it, if you're thinking about being one of those mice and you want to be protected, we are here to help you. We're here to serve. You can still go to My Turn. You will find many communities that are still giving vaccines, and they're giving them to everyone, no questions pretty much asked. So we strongly encourage you to still continue to get vaccine. Now is the time. It is not over. Masks coming off and stores opening up did not end COVID-19. So please be careful. Next slide, please. The rainbow. We love the thought of the rainbow. But like I said, even though it's warm outside and it's summer and everyone's just waiting to have parties and gatherings and school's out and everyone's excited, I want you to understand one thing about SARS-CoV-2. That is the name of the virus. Like my name is Montiel, that virus has a name. That virus is changing. That virus has multiple names now. That virus has one job. That virus does not want to die. It wants to remain. And it needs a host. It needs a person. It needs you. It wants you. It wants me. It doesn't care where it goes. It just wants to survive. It is important, if you have not protected yourself, if you have not protected your children or your family, and you're thinking about this, that you continue to ask questions. You do not have to be afraid of asking questions. It's great to ask them, and make sure that if you're going to be vaccinated, make sure you understand what you're doing. If family members are telling you things, loved ones, friends, just to make sure that you yourself understand the science behind COVID-19. Make sure you know for yourself. I'm a nurse, I've got a family. I have people in my family that still a little nervous about vaccinating. A lot of family members that have. It's a personal choice. But keep in mind, the virus knows nothing about our choices. It doesn't care about our choice. What it wants is us. And I am prepared to fight. I've been fighting, and we appreciate being called heroes and all that wonderful stuff. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you're protected, and we want to get in front of this virus. And the way that we do that is by protecting ourselves. And just keep in mind that your little ones could get exposed to it and they could be fine, but they bring it home to mom. They bring it home to dad. They bring it home to siblings. They bring it home to grandparents, and you can't see it. You're fighting an enemy that you can't see their face. It has a name, and we've got its number. So the way we fight it is by vaccinating and by telling our bodies to keep us safe and recognize it. So I really hope this information has been helpful. I know that there are a few questions that have come up, and I am happy to take those at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Brandman. Really appreciate the presentation and the clarity that you provided as you went through it and sharing the slides. We just have a few questions, and I know some of them you answered. Actually, a great majority of them you already answered with respect whether children should get the vaccine, and based on what you know, whether children will be required to get the vaccine. And I know that's something that parents have asked us. Every information that we have at this time basically has indicated to us that the state health department will not make it a requirement. Is that still what you are hearing from your communication channels?
That is my understanding, is that at this time, we are not looking at making it mandatory. And quite frankly, we know that mandatory makes people uncomfortable. What we'd rather do is focus on getting out the information and the true information about the science of how the vaccine protects lives, as opposed to focusing in on it being a forced process. So no, not at this time. I have not heard of anything that's making it mandatory.
Yes, thank you for the answer. And there was a similar question related whether our school district would make employees, and I could answer that one. At this time, our board has not given us any direction that they will make it mandatory for employees to get the vaccine. So once again, it is a voluntary decision. It is a choice that our employees will have to make to move forward, and so we want to make sure we answer that. And I had another question that I know wasn't submitted, but I know I've heard it, and you touched a little bit on it with respect to whether the vaccine will change your DNA. And I've also heard comments
Yeah.
and folks express that the virus is basically, or the mRNA injection is causing my body to have a chip inside of it. So I'm not sure if you've heard that one, but it's actually circulating out there that all of a sudden now everybody has a chip and the government is tracking everybody. So can you address that, please?
I would love to. Let me help you and let me put your minds at ease. As a nurse, I'm a scientist. So, first and foremost, scientist, right? When you think about people getting vaccinated, you have to ask yourself, well, who's willing to do this? Who's willing to put themselves out there and be vaccinated? Let me share with you what happened on the very first day that we were able to start vaccinating our staff. Every single physician that I'm aware of stood in that line to be vaccinated. Let me explain to you, that means a lot. When physicians are standing in the line saying, please give me this vaccine, it's telling you that they know that the benefit of the vaccine outweighs any risk. So first and foremost, know that physicians, the very doctors that you trust, that you take your babies to, that you take your loved ones to, and your mom and dad and siblings and yourself, those physicians stood in this line. 98.9% of our physicians, even at our own medical center, everyone stood in line to get vaccinated. There were a couple that had gone out and had babies and they hadn't been able to return back and get vaccinated. But when you hear that large of a number, you can't get that large of a number of physicians to do that unless they know that it's safe. There is no chip in this vaccine. There's no need to, there's no point of, and this is what you have to remember about COVID-19. Think about what we were going through in the height of this pandemic. Every researcher that had anything to do with development of vaccine, every last one of them, they were all scrambling to very quickly put this science together. We already knew about mRNA vaccine. That wasn't new, newer, but not brand new. The manufacturers, Kaiser, Moderna, all of these, they do this separately in their own lab. The only reason why our federal government really needed to step in and make sure they got involved in this process is because they needed to make sure that people like myself and people like you had an equal opportunity to be vaccinated. I have vaccinated. We know that politicians stand in these lines. We know that some of our actors and actresses and singers and people that we respect all around the world, that we love, stand in this line. There's no chip. There's no need for a chip. What we need is to be very practical in how we stay alive and how we protect our loved ones. Nothing in this vaccine is going to make me turn into another person The only difference in what happens with the virus shifting, you don't change, the virus changes. Let me really quickly tell you why that occurs so that you understand when you hear about variants and these different COVID vaccine COVID viruses now that are out there. For those of you that have taken biology maybe or certain science classes, every cell has DNA in it. And when that cell needs to replicate and turn into two cells, they need to be the same cell. And the way that happens is the DNA information from one cell transfers to the new cell. That transfer process does not always go 100%. Same in humans. We hear about people that have genetic disorders, such as maybe Down syndrome, for instance. That happens every now and then. An issue occurs with the DNA when cells are doing what they do. The same thing happened with the virus. The virus is a cell. As it attempted to multiply, sometimes the DNA information does not copy perfectly. So you have one cell dividing and the new cell now has other information. It's like they're fraternal twins. This one has DNA, this one has slightly different DNA. They're still pretty much the same. And that's what has happened with COVID-19 and with SARS-CoV-2. That process has led to multiple variations of COVID-19. So you're not fighting one COVID-19. You're trying to stay away from all of the variations of COVID-19 that are circulating, which is why we strongly suggested people vaccinate and protect themselves and their loved ones.
Thank you for that answer. And I have one final question. And in speaking as superintendent of schools here, I speak to a lot of our community members, I speak to employees, I speak to parents, I speak to students. And one question that I have received from some of our parents is that they are fearful in giving their children the vaccine because they say it's unknown. They're not sure whether they want to do it. They themselves might have gotten the vaccine, but they're reluctant in giving it to their children. So one comment that I've heard from them is that I'm going to wait and see what happens when the next group of kids are able to get the vaccine, meaning the next group, whether it's 3 to 11 or it's 5 to 11, whatever that next age group is, they are going to wait. So currently, based on what you've read and what you've known, and I know you keep very current on all this research that's going on and happening, are there clinical trials going on right now with young children in preparation for the next age group that will next be released with respect to opportunity to get the vaccine?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for that question. So let me share with you, and I'll just share with you Pfizer, for instance, which is one of the vaccines that's available now, the mRNA, one of the mRNA vaccines. Pfizer is already studying the vaccine in a much younger population. So they are studying currently in the age group of 2 years old to 11. You hear different numbers, but for the most part, what I would expect to hear is that the next vaccine that comes out for the next age group will probably include the 2 to 11 group. This is all, and this will probably be sometime in the fall, which really isn't that far away. So, I mean, it could be September, but, it could be sooner. It really just depends. Remember, we don't have any say over when this occurs. They have to be able to show and demonstrate the science and that it's safe. And remember all those things that we talked about. We don't just launch vaccines. They have to prove what is expected of them to prove that the vaccine is safe. Remember all of those things that we talked about, that it's going to elicit the immune response that's required and needed. And just keep in mind, as a parent, and I too am a parent, I understand the fear. So I don't want to negate that. I don't want to minimize it. And I certainly don't want to skip over it. Forget about me even being a parent. I'm a person also. I'm a nurse. I was here on the front line with so many sick people. And even when it was time to get vaccinated, being very honest, I had to stop for a second and say, okay, I am trusting science because I myself don't know every single detail. Yes, I know this was tried in mice. Yes, I know it was safe. Yes, I know that it's been going through trials and that it's working and people are doing well. But you're right, you don't necessarily know exactly how you yourself is going to respond. But this is what I told myself. I walked the hallways of this hospital. I know what COVID-19 looks like. I know what it does. So when I thought about all of the physicians that stood in that line, and I know they would not have stood in that line if they didn't feel the risks or the benefits outweighed the risks. I said to myself that this pandemic wants to take all of our lives, honestly, and I want to do my part. I'm going to sit in the seat. I'm going to get the vaccine. I am going to protect myself the best that I can, and I'm going to protect my family. And with my own son, I never told him. I was a little bit nervous. I was a little bit hesitant, but I know what COVID-19 looks like. I know the face of that virus. I know what it does. And I said, I'll take my chances with the vaccine as opposed to what I knew this virus could do to people, including some children. So I didn't want to take that chance. And that chance is what we all have to decide, right? My job is not to convince anyone. My job is to share with you information, and then you make decisions that you feel comfortable with. But what we do know, and this is an absolute truth, children carry these viruses, germs around. We know it, and the teachers kind of know it too. The kids all come in with a little bit of everything, and they love to pass it around. And unfortunately, this is one of those things that we don't really want them passing around. So we are desperately protecting them, like we're protecting them from flu, like we've protected them from chicken pox and all types of other things. So as a parent, I understand the fear. I would just ask that you think about what makes sense for you, what makes sense for your family. And we are strongly encouraging you to vaccinate your children and protect them like you would protect yourself and like you would protect all of your loved ones.
Thank you for that response, and hopefully that answer helps alleviate some fears and calms everybody. As someone like yourself who's walked those halls and seen that, I know that must be very difficult to be able to see of what this virus could do. Just to close out our time together, I want to thank, Ms. Brandman for the time she took to be here today. I mean, that's very amazing, and it's awesome that we have community partners such as Kaiser Permanente that's located here locally that reached out to us and basically said, hey, we'd like to do a vaccine presentation for your families. And so we look forward to doing a rebroadcast of this Zoom video recording, and it is pushing currently out live on YouTube, and we'll also rebroadcast it to garner additional viewers so that we can spread the word about the importance of the COVID-19 vaccine. I also want to thank Mr. John Fields. I know who he works with Kaiser as well, and he's the one who made the point of contact. And so I want to thank him, and he's here this evening. I see him here in the participant list. And also I want to thank Ms. Cynthia Cabello, who's working with our other partners as well with Walgreens to have our vaccine clinic happen once again next week, July 22nd and July 23rd. And so we are going to be providing all of these opportunities for students to get the vaccines, because we know that students feel more comfortable when they are able to take the vaccine here in our schools. We had a vaccine clinic. It's a co-sponsorship with Pharmacy 986 and the Boys and Girls Club and the City of La Puente and the district on Saturday. We just held it this past Saturday, and I was there, and I was going through the line talking to students and families as they were waiting to take their student to get the vaccine. Parents overwhelmingly said they came here because they knew the school district was involved, and so they felt safe. They felt that if the school district was sponsoring this, then it must be okay to move forward. And so that's the reason why we'll be continuing to offer these vaccine clinics, in partnership with, many different pharmacies and many different medical groups as we proceed and move forward. So once again, I'd like to say thank you to our Hacienda La Puente Unified School District community for being here this evening. And again, Ms. Brandman, thank you so much. And also to our Board of Education for their continued support of helping drive some of these initiatives that we are bringing to our families and students. So with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off and hope you have a great evening. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.